In this time of great despair and sadness, there were many who sought consolation through their loved ones. In this film, we will focus on the stories of love that ultimately saved or ended people's lives. These are their stories. Jerzy Bielecki was a Catholic, German-speaking inmate at Auschwitz in 1940. The 19-year-old had been admitted to the camp for suspicions he was a resistance fighter. 4 years later, Bielecki had risen to a privileged position in the camp and had fallen in love with Sila Cebulska after meeting her the year before. Bielecki and Cebulska, who had nothing left to lose after their families were dead and gone, decided to orchestrate an escape. Smuggling an SS uniform from the warehouse in Auschwitz, Bielecki posed as an SS officer and pretended to take his girlfriend outside the gates for interrogation. Surprisingly, their escape was successful. However, the two were separated when they hid in the home of Bielecki's uncle, Cebulska being sent to hide at a family's home. Towards the end of the war, Sila was informed that he had been found and killed. They were never reunited, until in 1982, Cebulska told her story to the maid. The woman, stunned, informed her that Bielecki had been on television that past week. In summer of 1983, the two reunited. Jerzy Bielecki brought Sila 39 roses for each year that they had been apart. Bielecki died in 2011, survived by children, grandchildren, and a great-grandchild. Sila passed away, unmarried, in 2002. Horace Greasley was a soldier from Britain, captured in 1940 and sent to endure 3 camps for prisoners of war. In the second POW camp Greasley endured, the quarry in Silesia, Horace met the daughter of the camp owner, Rosa Rauchbach, who worked as an interpreter. They met on occasion during the day and at night. Just as they began to fall in love, Greasley was shipped 40 miles away from the quarry in Silesia and sent to another camp. Greasley arrived at Freiwalde, his 3rd camp, heartbroken. Desperate to see Rosa again, Horace studied the patrol patterns of the guards and broke out through his window to visit Rauchbach all the 40 miles. Horace Greasley escaped Freiwalde over 200 times to see Rosa. On their last meeting, Horace told Rose to flee as he worried what would happen if the Allies won and she was discovered to be a German. After their liberation, Horace received letters from Rosa as they worked out how to see one another again. In December of 1945, letters from Rose stopped. Greasley then received a letter from a friend of Rose, informing him that she had died giving birth. Greasley is unsure if the child was his. Horace Greasley is best known for being immortalized in the photograph of him confronting Nazi Heinrich Himmler. When ordered to sit down, Greasley defiantly stood standing. Rather than be shot and killed, Himmler studied Greasley and continued his surveillance of the camp in silence. Horace also wrote an autobiography, Did the Birds Still Sing in Hell?, about his story. A Jew living in neutral Switzerland in 1942, John Rothschild took an extraordinary risk to save the love of his life. In 1934, a year after the Nazi power took over neighboring Germany, the Rothschild family bought a large estate to save families in Germany and other bordering areas. In 1939, Renee was sent to stay in a large estate with the Rothschild family, who her family was acquainted. There she met John, and after 3 weeks of her staying in the home, the 19-year-olds were engaged. The Rothschild estate was raided in 1942, sending 14 people to Auschwitz. Renee was arrested and sent to an internment camp, where her Swiss working permit was not upheld. Upon being notified, her fiancé did the unthinkable. Rothschild walked into a concentration camp, as a Jew, to save his fiancée. Rothschild asked to see the commander of the camp, well aware of the fact they could have refused to let him out afterwards. However, they allowed him to talk to the commander. By giving the commander of the camp a package of Swiss cigars, the man exclaimed he would do anything for a Swiss. In this conversation, Rothschild saved his fiancée Renee from deportation to Auschwitz. 70 years later, Renee Rothschild remembers that day. "This is my knight in shining white armor," she says. Walking out in freedom, the couple fled to France, where they learned to go to a restaurant and meet a guide who would lift his hat upon introduction. The guide came, and they made their way to safety through a fence in Switzerland. The couple was married in December 1942. They live together still today in Louisville, Kentucky. These men and women went above and beyond the limits we believe there are to love. We realize in situations such as these shown that love truly does conquer all. Not only were they all incredibly brave, but they kept the presence of love with them always, which is a very rare virtue to attribute to the Holocaust. They found and kept love in a hopeless place and continued to do so the rest of their lives. They are brave, loving humans, which makes them the greatest of heroes.